I'm not from Palestine, but here I stand, my eyes telling 1,000 stories about a land of hope, a land of courage, a land where one child is braver than 1,000,000 men. I am not from Palestine, and the world is blind. They won't open their eyes or even take a stand. Can they hear the children's cries? Or the bombs that are raining from the skies? I know they do. But all they do is justify their crimes. I'm not from Palestine, but I bleed, because every Palestinian's wound is mine. I'm not from Palestine, but I understand that what goes around comes around, and that one day the sun will shine, and my hands will touch the sand of a free land called Palestine.
Unless you've been living under a rock these past 10 months, you will have witnessed the chilling dystopia that our world has turned into. Or rather, has finally been exposed to be, because as we'll discuss later, our world has always been this sick. And it's beginning to strongly resemble the dystopian society of Oceania in 1984. This video will expose the lies of traditional Western media and authorities and the lengths that they would go to prevent you from seeing the truth. If you are not familiar with 1984, it is a dystopian novel that warns us about what our lives will be like if people allow their governments and the elite to gain too much power in our societies. 1984 is a horror story, even though they put it under the sci-fi genre, because it's about this place called Oceania, which is controlled by the party and a mysterious leader called Big Brother, who have brainwashed the population into utter obedience, so people cannot speak or think freely. And there is constant surveillance by cameras, which is why the party has this slogan called Big Brother is watching you, and they use propaganda to psychologically manipulate people. Like they'll say war is peace, and freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. Sounds like a horror movie, right? Before we dive in, these are key terms you need to remember so that this video actually makes sense, especially if you haven't read 1984 before. 1. Big Brother, which is the symbol in the book that represents the party's excessive control over the population, which can be a stand-in for our corrupt governments, authorities, and people around the world with malicious intent. 2. Thought Police, which is basically a group of secret police that go around and arrest or even murder people for simply thinking differently from the party's values. Like, they limit freedom of speech by even trying to control people's thoughts. And simply thinking the wrong thing can get you detected and deleted from the world. And you might be thinking that this is all an exaggeration, but I'm gonna show you how his predictions have come true in our world, and our world isn't much different from Oceania. Welcome back to Becoming DISScomfortable, a Gen Z podcast where we usually talk about becoming the best version of yourself. But today we'll be deep diving into an incredibly important topic because reflecting on our morals and values also contributes to becoming our best selves. I also got to act as a little independent journalist for this video, as I got to visit the largest student encampment in Canada at the University of Toronto, and I asked them a bunch of questions, which I will be showing you guys later. Here are the video chapters, also in the description, and without further ado, let's get into it. Chapter number 1, the trampling of students' rights and the myth of freedom of speech in North America. If you do not know what I'm talking about, I am referring to a global movement recently called the Gaza Solidarity Encampments, where Gen Z students around the world, from France to Seoul to America, have united to protest against the genocide in Gaza at the hands of Satan Yahu's government and is not real. Protests have erupted at schools including Harvard, Yale, Columbia, UCLA, Dartmouth, and more. A cause for which students have been arrested, physically and sexually assaulted as police forcibly remove the hijabs of these 4 women at the Arizona State University, for which students have lost degrees, scholarships, and jobs. Surely their sacrifices at the very least warrant the question of Why? Why would they sacrifice so much, their education, their youth, their futures, if the cause was unjust? And what happened to the freedom of speech clause that we hear Americans use time and again to justify the existence of their country? There has been so much documented violent aggression towards students.
So now in the US, we have Zionist terrorists literally beating up pro-Palestinian students at UCLA, bashing them in the head with wooden planks, shooting fireworks at them, spraying them with pepper spray, with not even one police officer to stop them. No police, no campus security present. It apparently took 2 hours for them to get there, while the students sat bleeding and bruised. And at the same time, we have police and state troopers, thousands of them, violently attacking pro-Palestinian students, beating them, arresting them, spraying mace, the default response at pretty much every university campus, all for protesting. Are we starting to make the connections yet? The police are literally shaking hands with the pro-Zionists. In a normal society, violence is used to stop violence. The police should be there to stop violent activity. But in a society, in a land established on white supremacy, violence is met even with non-violent activities if those activities stand for the rights of Black and brown people. Which is why police in the US will attack pro-Palestinian students, protesters for Black Lives Matter, or indigenous peoples or Native Americans protesting theft of land and natural resources, beating them, arresting them, the whole deal. But when white people storm a literal federal building, i.e. Capitol Hill, the police are just nowhere to be found. The friggin' KKK will have protests and be met with no violence. Police are all on PTO, I suppose. But as soon as someone stands with a sign that says Free Palestine, nah, get 'em, get 'em. And if a white pro-Zionist is using a wooden pallet to bash the heads of pro-Palestinian students, no violence is needed. Two things to remember. One, this is exactly what the Israeli occupation forces do in Palestine. White Zionist settlers will violently attack Palestinians, beating them, shooting at them, killing them, and they will literally be escorted by the occupation forces. They will be physically protecting the settlers. And that is exactly how the US is run. If the police aren't beating up the pro-Palestinian students, then the white Zionists definitely will. The police will actually let it happen. Even if there are white people and Jewish people standing with the Palestinians. Those white folks are Black and brown by association. Because they stand for Black and brown causes, they will be treated like Black and brown people. Which leads me to number two. Remember that an overwhelming number of US police departments are trained by the Israeli occupation forces in Israel. Israel is the child of the US. Israel could not exist without the West.
There were reports of fireworks being launched directly into the encampments. These are peaceful encampments, must I remind you, where students are like literally living. It's like they're camping out here and they are being hit with fireworks and who knows what else. There have been so many colleges that have actively let the police loose on these students, resulting in mass violence, even though these were peaceful protests. This shows us the lengths to which the system will go to ensure that our words and our protests do not contradict their actions. They are opening fire on college students. These are 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They went to college to get an education, and they will leave with permanent psychological scars. And that is if they are able to endure the assaults and the violence that they are being subjected to by police and psychotic Zionists. And the irony is crazy because we grew up being taught that the police are supposed to keep us safe. And this has already happened with the Black Lives Matter movements that we were seeing just a few years ago. Why is history repeating itself again and again? Now, it is important to note that this is nothing new. We have previously seen many student strikes in history, such as in 1968, college students uniting to protest against the Vietnam War, as well as the civil rights movement, anti-Iraq war, protests for divestment from South African apartheid. The largest student strike in American history took place in May and June 1970 in response to the Kent State shootings and the American invasion of Cambodia, and over 4 million students participated participated in this action. It is also important to note that student protests have rarely been on the wrong sides of history. And so many of these causes that students protested against are now recognized as wrong and immoral today by everyone. It is crazy how we are living through this right now. We are witnessing what will be in a Wikipedia article 20 years from now. What will be treated as the Holocaust, where it is now so clear to people who the oppressor was. But right now, people, a very small but powerful minority of people, is actively denying this. I'm going to uni this fall, and I am genuinely afraid about what's gonna happen if I stand up for my rights and protest on campus. Is this not what universities are for? Students have been losing degrees and opportunities, seeing all their hard work go to waste.
Remember how Asna Tabasum was supposed to give a valedictorian speech this year at USC, but it was canceled after pro-Israeli students complained about something she posted on her Instagram stories? Well, during the Student Recognition Awards ceremony, she received the standing ovation that she deserved, and it gave me full body chills I had to share.
Asna Tabasum. Asna will graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering, Molecular and Cellular Engineering, and a minor in Resistance to Genocide.
So this shows you that her peers are in accordance with her. Gen Z is mostly united on this matter. And I believe I came across stats about how this is a generational divide. It's not about race or gender or religion. You have Jews advocating for the liberation of Gaza, and the Is Not Really propagandists are well aware of this. So now they're using a new tactic to censor student voices, which we'll discuss in a little bit. First, take a look at Asna's speech and brilliant response, which was then published in a USC article.
We finally have Asna's USC valedictorian graduation speech, and it is far more powerful than I ever thought it could be. Asna published her speech on dailytrojan.com, which is an independent newspaper for USC, and wait for it. She starts it off by saying, President Folt, Provost Guzman, faculty, staff, families, and fellow class of 2024, it is my honor to stand before you today as your valedictorian. I am filled with gratitude to have the privilege of, and then we have absolutely no idea what she was going to say. This is the first half of her speech. And this is the second half, to which she ends it with, congratulations, class of 2024. And an editor put a note saying that the Daily Trojan did not write, edit, or change the speech or its presentation. This speech was published as it was written and shared to us by Asna Tabasum. He literally said, you did not allow me to speak, therefore you do not get to hear what I had to say. She is absolutely brilliant. I do hope we all get to hear her speech on her time and in her own way.
And now I present to you my journalism skills. I'm just kidding. I don't know the first thing about journalism, but let's pretend I knew what I was doing. I visited the University of Toronto and interviewed 2 media students who were at the time living on the largest student encampment in Canada.
My name's Erin. I am a 4th-year undergraduate student here at the University of Toronto.
So for somebody who has never actually, has no idea what's going on over here, could you please briefly explain what you guys are doing at the encampments and why?
We are here protesting the fact that the University of Toronto has active investments in weapons manufacturing companies complicit in Israeli apartheid. We're demanding that they divest and that they disclose their endowments, so where our tuition dollars go, and that they also cut ties with Israeli academic institutions that are complicit in this ongoing genocide. And what we're witnessing coming out of Rafah, out of Gaza, the genocide that we've been witnessing for the past 8 months is truly quite horrific. And as a student, having my tuition dollars go towards that is appalling. And so that's why I've been here. That's why I am here. And we've been at this encampment for the past 43 days.
Just the level of organization. You guys have so many people making sure that it's all secure. It's incredible. I didn't actually know if you guys would talk to me because I came across so many people on social media who were revealing their stories of how they had their words completely twisted in the media when they had like traditional media agencies coming in and trying to report on it, just like straight up lying about things, twisting their words, and that's why they refuse to engage with the media. So I'm just wondering, have you ever experienced that? The media twisting your words or falsely or inaccurately reporting on something?
Yeah, we definitely had our fair share of folks, kind of mischaracterizing our movement, mischaracterizing, the encampment here. But we've been able to combat that by just continuing to show up, continuing to demand divestment. Something I will say too is something that's getting a little bit lost is there's a lot of focus on the tactic itself and what's happening with the encampment, what's happening with the negotiations, what's happening, with this injunction that we have upcoming, and not a lot about the why we're here, right? There's an active and ongoing genocide happening right now. Rafah is being bombed right now. That is why we're here, right? We are here in solidarity with people of Palestine. We are here demanding divestment, and that is often something that is not included in most of the interviews. They choose to just focus on the fact that, students have tents, right? Like, why do we have tents? It's because there's a genocide. It's because the University of Toronto is funding that genocide.
Hello, my name is Calliope Anwar McCall. I'm a student in my 4th year at the University of Toronto, majoring in diaspora studies, and I've been living in this encampment for the past 43 days.
Have you ever been punished or like lost opportunities? Like we've heard of people losing degrees, scholarships, jobs.
In the fall, after the beginning of the genocide and the beginning of the ground invasion of Gaza, I spoke up in a class, and my teacher very forcefully told me to shush, basically silenced me and called the police on me, basically, and the police were waiting for me outside of the classroom. This is a clear violation of my human right, my fundamental right to protest. And these types of consequences against people who express pro-Palestinian opinions is commonplace at this university. They predate October and they have continued since. Especially in the encampment now, a lot of students are being punished for and being censored for expressing public opinion on Palestine. And, we've experienced a lot of hate, and defamation from the university regarding this encampment. We have multiple pro-Israel agitators that turn up at the gates every day, yelling insults, threatening to behead us, pulling out knives. You must have seen that video. Or doctors saying that they're not going to provide us health care. These are types of consequences that pro-Palestinian activists face every day. They're commonplace and they're absolutely horrific. One of the most shocking things that I witnessed in this encampment so far is I was helping unpack the food during mid-May approximately, and there was a big cardboard box of granola bars. Someone had slid between 2 packs of granola bars a razor blade. So basically the intent was when you reach down and put your hand between the granola bars, between the boxes to take out a granola bar, you'd cut your hand at the bottom. Like you couldn't visibly see the razor blade, but it was there at the bottom. One of my comrades nearly cut themselves on the razor blade, and ever since we've been very, very diligent about checking our food, making sure that we're vouching for who's providing donations. We've had multiple scares and suspicions that our food is being tampered with, and this was the most explicit example of pro-Israel agitators basically deliberately wanting to cause us harm. And this is one of many, many, many examples of horrific things that have happened during this encampment. One of the things I want to call out that the media does a lot is we're always faced and having to confront false charges and weaponization of anti-Semitism. This occurs daily, and it is something that the media is complicit in and is promoting. These types of hateful narratives that members of this encampment are promoting hate, or they are putting the wider community in danger, or they're making Jewish students on campus feel unsafe. Repeatedly, we've come forward and said there is a difference between feeling unsafe and actually being unsafe, between Judaism and the state of Israel, and these need to be separate. And this is something that the media, mainstream media, is very complicit in. They are purposefully conflating the two. It's basically a tactic of defamation. It basically justifies more violence against us, and it justifies more agitators coming to our fences saying that we're being hateful, when in reality, if anyone is to walk around camp, have a look around, they're going to see a very peaceful, diverse, beautiful place, a coming together of many different cultures and faiths and religions and backgrounds. You know, we have kids playing, blowing bubbles, we have, you know, soccer games, we have community events and shared meals. You know, when there's this weaponization of anti-Semitism, we're very exhausted by this narrative because there is no room for anti-Semitism in this encampment, and that has been clear since day one. And it's just, I'm really hopeful that the mainstream media will finally learn to accept this.
My name is Aya. I'm a Palestinian student at the University of British Columbia, and I'm studying English Lit and journalism.
Give me some context. Have you been on the campus in the last few months?
Yeah, I have. I moved out. I used to live on-campus housing. I moved out in April, and I've been back to the encampment a few times. I think the encampment started a week or two after I moved out. And I've been there, I would say, like maybe a total of 6 times, something like that.
Ever since October 7th, what has the atmosphere been like on UBC?
Oh, it's been insane. I study arts, and everyone was excited. Not like poli-sci teachers were so excited to incorporate this into their curriculums. Philosophy teachers wanted to put this into their curriculums, and it was so weird. And everyone you run into, because I'm very publicly, like openly Palestinian, you know, I'm very, very proud of it. And whenever you run into somebody maybe you've known since high school, or somebody you just met maybe like last week, immediately that's the first thing they ask you. Like, and they don't ask you, hey, like, you're Palestinian, did you have like family there, or are you okay? No, the first thing they're gonna ask you is so what do you think of what Hamas did? And I'd be like, oh, that's definitely something to say to somebody you barely know.
Wow. I was remembering something you said in high school, like discrimination like against the natives of the land. And it's like,
yes.
At first I thought, because I was so uneducated on what is happening in Palestine and like the atrocities Israel is committing against them, because back then nobody was really talking about it, right? I thought you were talking about the natives over here in Canada and stuff. I had no... 1 second.
No worries.
Okay, I had absolutely no idea what your family was experiencing in there, you know, because in the class everyone has a mask on, but it's crazy like how much has happened since those days in TOK.
Yeah, it's definitely a shared struggle with Indigenous people, like Indigenous people of Canada, because, you know, those are the people you will see at the front in all the rallies and the protests. You will see them doing the most genuinely, because they can empathize so well with the struggle. And, you know, no one really understands what it's like to go through something like this, just mentally and emotionally. I may have never been there, but I still feel everything, you know? And nobody really understands it quite like, you know, the Indigenous people of Canada, Indigenous people to just generally the Americas in general. You know, I grew up always knowing about this. All my like Arab and Muslim friends always knew about this growing up. And then it just shocked me to know that no one knows about this when it's my entire life essentially growing up revolved around it.
Going back to our high school experiences, it was like, even though I'm Muslim, because I'm not Palestinian, like it was talked about, but no one delved into it as deep as that. I didn't even know that certain companies were investing in the genocide and what to boycott and what not to. Like, I wish I'd learned about that sooner.
Oh, the boycott stirs up so much like drama and controversy, but as far as I know, especially in like Jordan being 75% Palestinian, boycotts have been going strong there for years. Last time I went to Jordan, I was like with my friends and I was like, do you guys want to go get Starbucks? Because I love Starbucks in Jordan, okay? And they were like, what are you talking about? Why would you go to Starbucks? They give money to Israel. And I was like, oh, see, I didn't know that. And like same with like a lot of ice cream places. I don't remember which one exactly, but I was like, hey, do you guys want to get ice cream? And they were like, they give money to Israel. What's wrong with you? I was like, I didn't know any of this. And you know, the BDS movement specifically has been obviously really strong nowadays, but I didn't know about it until recently. But it's been happening for years and years.
I don't even have the words to describe like what's happening, but I'm really, really glad that at the very least all of this stuff has come out, and the world is finally seeing the truth.
I actually thought that was what was going to happen, like, immediately. I thought, okay, well, you know, they're going into Gaza, they're massacring people like they've done many, many times. There have been countless massacres, obviously, within Palestine as a whole. But now with whatever's happening in Gaza, like the first couple days, I was like, okay, finally people are going to hear about this and know about this. Yet I was like greeted with like the rudest awakening that people only heard about the fact that some white people died in Israeli territory, and there was a whole Hamas is the villain like narrative being pushed, and no one was talking about the fact that Israel is founded on an apartheid state and that people are being massacred in Gaza, and they have been being massacred for like almost a century. But all of a sudden it's like, oh, this thing called Hamas popped up out of thin air and just decided to go into Israel and bomb people. This is not me saying that I am pro-Hamas or anything. I'm not pro-Hamas lover like they will say, but the narrative that I was seeing pushed throughout October was that, oh, these crazy Palestinians just came up out of nowhere and decided to attack the poor innocent Israelis. And I was like, so we're not remembering anything that happened. Like, even in 2021, there were so many protests because of what was happening in like Sheikh Jarrah.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like, are we all forgetting this? Like you white bitches were posting Free Palestine on your stories 2 years ago, and now you're posting I stand with Israel. Like make it make sense.
At this point, this is the thing that I'm exploring in the video essay. It's like they're using the Hamas stuff to deflect, to redirect our attention, right? To get us to stop talking about what's happening over there. And that's why it's so important to like to amplify Palestinian voices and like what is going on over there, and to just like, I straight up at this point, I don't even pay attention to any of the not really stuff. Like they can keep going. Can you tell me a little bit about like what has life been like for you, for your Palestinian family, either back in Palestine, in the West Bank, or here?
It's really complicated. If it's like post October 7th, it was really hard, but lucky for me, you know, I literally locked myself in my dorm room, didn't go to any of my classes after like my first day back at school after that, because I just couldn't handle it anymore. Couldn't handle like everyone being like, oh, so Hamas, and I was like, I don't want to talk about Hamas anymore. I'm a person. Like, you know, in general, I always kind of just grew up, my parents wanted me to be really conscious of my identity, and you know, they wanted me to know about, you know, the right of return, and that I deserve the right of return, and that's what we're fighting for. Because my family, they're not like willingly in Jordan or willingly in the West. You know, my dad's side of the family, so me, I'm technically from Jaffa, which is now technically called Tel Aviv. We're not originally Gazan, neither my dad's family or my mom's family, but my dad's family, most of them went to Jordan during the Nakba. My mom's family kind of, you know, they went every which way. So a lot of her family was in Gaza, even though they're not originally Gazan. Most people in Gaza are not originally Gazan. They were all displaced. And that's why you see it in the state it is, because people don't have any permanence there. So we did have some people, you know, communicating with us towards the beginning. But then, you know, a couple months in, one of the houses that most of them were hiding in, it was bombed, and all the people inside, you know, passed away. They were killed by Israeli fire. And eventually we just kind of stopped getting any updates. So as of right now, I don't think we have any family left in Gaza, which is crazy because that's hundreds of people just gone. And you know what they would say is, I hope at least one of us lives, so someone can tell the story, so someone can tell people what has happened, to what has been happening to us. But we don't really have anyone for that anymore. But you know, the people that were, you know, lucky enough to escape, or maybe unlucky because they're not in their own land anymore, the people that did get to leave in my family on both my mom and dad's side, you know, they've been very vocal. A lot of them, you know, art is really powerful. A lot of them have written books, poetry. My grandfather on my father's side, he wrote these books where he talked all about just what life was like in the really small village he was from in Jaffa. My dad's family's from El Safriya, and they've been there for like centuries, and it was so complicated and detailed. He wrote everything. He drew maps. He made family trees of all the families that lived in the village, so many people, and also he like put them in like a hierarchy, like who was like higher class essentially in the village. It was so detailed, and these are treasure troves of knowledge. It's how we preserve our culture, because El Safriya doesn't exist anymore. Even if, you know, Palestine was freed and we went back to where we lived, those cities and towns have been bulldozed or built over. So it's really important to kind of preserve that knowledge, and that's what my grandparents, what my parents, they are trying to instill in the younger generation, because the like Israeli saying is the old will die and the young will forget. The old are dying. My grandfather, the one that wrote all of these books, he passed away a couple months ago, and he didn't get to die in his own country. So the old are dying, but the young cannot forget. They should not forget, because we are what preserves our culture. You know what I mean?
When we were learning about this, that's the one thing I would worry about, like all of that history, all of that art, like that culture, an entire culture has been eradicated. So how is that going to be passed on? But this has given me a lot of hope. I don't really know very many Palestinians besides you, but I'm so hopeful that with all the Palestinian content creators I've seen online, they are going, like every single day, they're showing up, they're sharing about their culture and their heritage, and they're not afraid to speak out, even if they're put in situations where they feel unsafe after coming out and talking about it.
No, that's what's so crazy about diaspora, because you never see a Palestinian saying, I'm Palestinian from Gaza or some random place in Palestine. They're always like, I'm Palestinian from Jordan, which I am, or I'm Palestinian from Lebanon, I'm Palestinian from Egypt. That's the crazy thing about diaspora. And you notice also a lot of the people, Palestinian people I got to meet at university, they're all international students, and you know, they're afraid to go to some of these rallies, to do a lot of any like activism, because of police violence. You know, an international student, they get arrested, their visa gets taken away, they get deported. So you meet people from all over. You know, we're waiting for the day where you can say, I'm Palestinian from Palestine. That's why it always irks us so much when we hear someone say, oh, I'm Israeli, but they have like a dual citizenship to like the US or something, because you're not Israeli. You can say you're Israeli, but we can't say we're Palestinian. In fact, it's not even like a box to check off anymore when you're like applying for Canadian citizenship. They took it away. So you can just freely say you're Israeli. We can't say that. And even if we do say it, you have to follow it up with something, because that's just the really cruel reality of diaspora.
Has there ever been any instance on campus where you felt like unsafe? Like, not just, I know you mentioned that you locked yourself in and you weren't like going out, but have there been any instances where people made you feel unsafe?
UBC has a lot of Zionists. The thing that's unique about UBC is that, have you ever heard of Hillel?
Hillel?
Yeah, it's this Jewish organization, international thing, or maybe just a national thing, but whatever. It's not specific to UBC, and it's not very Jewish. It's very Zionist, to the point where, you know, a lot of Jewish people going to their events have been, you know, turned away at the door because they don't agree with Israel, or they're not Zionists in general. So yeah, they're very Zionist, and they have a branch on campus. And this branch of Hillel likes to stir up shit as much as possible. It's actually insane. They made fake stickers and put them around the campus saying, I heart Hamas. And they put the UBC like social justice like club logo on it. And that social justice club has been very vocal about like standing with Palestine. They've been working a lot with the Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights organization on campus. So they literally did defamation. And they got like no one said anything about it. Nothing happened, despite like the Social Justice Center and the SPHR like being like, hey, this is insane, like this is defamation, this is dangerous. Nothing happened to them, no repercussions. There was also a banner put up, like a huge banner put above the student building saying Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. And Hillel really wanted those students that put it up expelled, kicked out. It was crazy. It was so unsafe for them. And to top it all off, they brought an IDF soldier to campus. This IDF soldier was walking around and it was insane. So much shit got stirred up that day. It was really messy. The libraries were chaos. It was really crazy. Like, I was in class and my friend texted me, she's like, hey, I literally saw the IDF soldier that they were bringing. Like, he is just here. So I left class and I'm just like, this is crazy. Like, because what do they teach these soldiers? They teach them to shoot anything that moves in Gaza. Like, how many people has this man killed? I don't know. So that was crazy. I immediately went back to my like dorm and I just like hid out there for the day. It was crazy.
I don't, oh my god, how is that even like happening? Like, this is a campus with university students. They're supposed to be studying in peace.
No, exactly. Oh my god, the police presence has increased so much, and there is a lot of content being circulated around online of these police, not just police, campus security in general, which, by the way, campus security have no real authority. I don't know what they think what authority they think they have. It's really embarrassing. But they are very much targeting POC students. It's really weird. You see them everywhere and they will give you the stare down of the century. It's really weird. I haven't had many like negative experiences with them. You know, if I go to rallies, I tend to mask up. If I you know, I like came from, I used to live in the US, you know, you don't fuck with police there. One of the very first protests that happened on campus, these protests are BDS protests, okay? They happened back during the apartheid of South Africa, begging for the university to divest, and they're happening now. Now, the university did not divest from the apartheid of South Africa, but people are still protesting now for divesting from Israeli apartheid. They really did not want us to go in the library. The campus security, they were literally so on it, and they were just like, you can't go in, and I literally like went up to one of them and I yelled at him and I was like, we pay tuition, like, you're not a real cop, you can't tell me not to go in. And they just let all of us in at that point, because genuinely, what power do you have? It's so embarrassing. You're not a cop, you only exist there so you know when to call the police. We have this like big thing in the school, it's like the engineering like like it's like a big thing. It's weird, and people just go and spray paint it and they paint over it, like everyone does it, and they always do it to kind of like reflect what's happening at the moment. Like they did like pride colors for pride, or they like sometimes if it's like final season they'll go and like scribble all over like formulas. It's really weird. And literally the first couple days there was some Palestine stuff on it, taken down immediately. Usually the university lets it stay up for like a week or two, but no, they took it down immediately. They were like, no, this is vandalism and not okay. Same thing with like people putting up like pro-Palestine posters. Campus security will go and harass them when people put up posters for everything from clubs to political causes to tutoring services, and they never get like harassed. They will literally go up to you and be like, do you have a permit? And you're like, I don't need a permit. It's really weird. It's so weird.
It's giving like protecting one side and always constantly like hammering onto one side specifically, instead of like, if you want to be neutral, then be neutral. Don't let anybody do anything on there, right? But
no, and to top it off, the fact that like the university is just lying about what they have invested in Israel. They're just lying straight up. It's crazy. Again, the whole point of the encampment is they just want divestment. It's not there solely to make a statement, because again, effective protests. People are asking for divestment, and the very few statements that we've gotten from admin or like the UBC president, which bear in mind are very few and far between. He keeps like rejecting, like Francis Bacon, who the president of UBC, keeps rejecting meetings with people within the encampment or the SPHR, but he will keep taking meetings with like Hillel and all of the like these Zionist organizations, and just release really like bullshit statements being like, we don't actually have as much money invested as you think, which these statements keep being debunked over and over again by student organizations and graduate student organizations. So I mean, it's not any different though. They never divested from South Africa. We hope they'll divest now, but it's not shocking if they don't.
That's the other thing that I was researching a lot about, the insane manipulation and straight up lying, like, because they can. They have their talons into all the media outlets, like, they can literally say whatever they want and paint it as true. But I'm so glad that you guys are doing your own research and, like, are making sure that you're debunking all of this.
I'm happy that so many people at school are willing to do this research and just make it publicly available information. Because, you know, what they will do, especially the university, they will never release their own calculations. They'll just be like, oh, so it's not as much as you think, I swear. They'll never release their own calculations. Meanwhile, you have students and graduate students coming with receipts, with calculations, with sources, and it's just like, I don't understand. It's really crazy how they just, like, can just say something and people are gonna be like, okay, they said something, just lay off. And it's like, they lied. I don't get it.
Have you ever felt the media falsely twisting your words or reporting inaccurately? Like, can you remember any instances of that happening?
Personally, I don't talk much to the media, but I always notice things. You know, Vancouver's had massive rallies for Palestine. I don't know how it is in Toronto, but the rallies were going crazy. And the news reports on it would be like, oh, they said something racist, something anti-Semitic, something blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, where are you getting this?
I actually haven't even seen them on the news. Like, they don't even bother to acknowledge it at this point. Like, there could be millions of people outside and there's no news or very little news coverage of it. One last question. Have you ever felt your rights as a student, and first as a student and then also as a Palestinian student, be trampled over at any given point since your university experience began?
Most of it was definitely social. People are just insane. Like, it genuinely never occurs to these people that, like, hey, I might have family there that's, like, dying or dead. It's just always like, oh, so what are your opinions on this? And I'm like, oh, so I don't really want to talk about this. Oh, I guess one time I had this, like, crazy Zionist as, like, a prof on the first day of class. She was basically like, she was, like, going through the syllabus, and it was like a German studies course, like, it was like a fairy tales and stuff. And she got to, like, she was like, oh, anti-Semitism in German literature. And I was like, that's great, actually, I'm really interested to hear about that. And she was like, yeah, with all the things happening in Israel. And I was like, oh, so your terminology is really interesting. And, you know, I didn't think much of it. I was like, if it, like, it's supposed to be a grade booster course, I'll complain after the course if I really want to. But I asked her for an extension once, and this teacher is so known for giving extensions. She gives extensions like crazy. One of my friends asked her for an extension, and he was like, for no good reason, and then he had to extend the extension twice. And the second time he felt like he needed an excuse, and he was like, oh, the Taiwan earthquake. That no one died in the Taiwan earthquake, and 4 people died from like landslides afterwards, and their names are readily available to the public. So I was just like, your lie is insane. But she didn't even, like, fact check it. She was like, yeah, of course, go ahead. I asked her for an extension, and I didn't even say Palestine. I said the Middle East, because, you know, that could mean I'm from Israel, I could be from Lebanon, I could be from Iran, whatever. So I literally just said, hey, like, the stuff in the Middle East is kind of, like, getting to me. I had, like, a family member die recently. Can I have, like, a week extension? And she was like, take it up with academic advising. I was like, oh, so you give extensions to everyone for no good reason, but I have to take it up with academic advising? And I literally took it up with academic advising, and the person that reviewed my case, I think they were, like, Latino or something, and they felt so bad. They were like, I'm so sorry, you have an extension until July, and here is some therapy resources. And I was like, okay, so I didn't ask for all this, but thank you. Like, she did not want to give me that extension. And even when she gave me the extension, she marked me so harshly when it was supposed to be, like, free marks. So I don't know.
We've seen it all on social media. I was doing research on a Palestinian guy who lost his degree, actually multiple, his friends as well.
Oh my god.
Yeah, all for being Palestinian and for allegedly being on the encampments. So they weren't even sure. This is all based on speculation, and he's losing his degree after 4 years of hard work, which is insane.
No, that's insanity.
But
No, I was lucky. I did a first year program, so I didn't have many classes. My program gave me most of the credits I needed.
Well, stay safe, because you have to always be like on your guard and vigilant with these types of people. Actually, do you have anything you want to say in regards to like Palestine?
Some Palestinians in the encampment were complaining about this. Don't use Palestinian people for your token activism, because you know, a lot of the times if activists just want to be taken seriously, they're going to call up some random Palestinian, any Palestinian they know, and they're going to make them like the poster boy for the point they're trying to get across, the poster boy for their activism, which is kind of foul.
Dehumanizing.
No, absolutely. Like the whole thing, like a huge key like part of advocating for a free Palestine is advocating against the dehumanization of Palestinians. We don't want to be just numbers. We don't want to just be collateral damage. We don't want to be like, we don't want to be just dehumanized like that. So you need to make sure that in your activism, you're not actively dehumanizing Palestinians either, because just because your political opinions are correct doesn't mean that you are behaving in a socially correct way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's something you have to like constantly be checking in on every single day. And and this is why like I try to ask the Palestinians around me, but at the same time it's also like everyone is different, and it's always better to get like a second opinion, a third opinion on your activism, and just try to make sure that it's kind of like that whole, you know, the white savior concept in Africa.
Yes.
They try to help people without like realizing. They try to help people in their own way, and they think they're doing something good, when in reality it's not actually benefiting the people that they're trying to help in the way that they should be.
No, the white savior complex is genuinely, it baffles me, because oh my god, they don't even realize it, and you just, it makes you feel like such a bad person for pointing it out, because, you know, we're so encouraged as POC to accept the bare minimum, but we deserve more than that.
Thank you so much for your time. Chapter 2, Censorship and the Silencing of Student Voices. I couldn't help but think about how if Winston, the main character of 1984, was caught writing his thoughts down in his diary, he could be executed or given 25 years of forced labor. The level of insecurity that this party felt, to the point where they would even ban the act of writing to try to control people's thoughts and behavior, which brings me to the potential TikTok ban. TikTok is right now Gen Z's new search engine. Research is showing that the younger generation is much more likely to use TikTok to find news and search things up rather than using Google or traditional search engines. And the government of America realizes this. They know that they do not currently have the same chokehold over social media as they do over traditional media outlets, which have been allowing them to easily manipulate and control the narrative in the media. And this is why in March 2024, the House of Representatives passed the TikTok ban or sell bill. And then this was sent to the devil, aka Biden, who signed it in April. They did this under the guise of TikTok is stealing information from American citizens, which may or may not be true. But what is true is they are actively trying to censor the younger generation and take away our platforms of communication to silence us. We are living in a time where everybody has phones, so we can instantly get proof, which makes it harder for traditional media to twist our words or straight up lie about it in the articles that they write. All of these videos I've been able to pull up or mention about the horrific violence being enacted on students is because of the students that have been documenting this profusely and sharing it on social media. Otherwise, who would believe us? We can no longer rely on most traditional media outlets to report accurately without bias towards Palestinians and resistance to genocide supporters. And they leave students in a very vulnerable position. So I asked our community for help on Instagram with making this video. So thank you so much to a member who wanted to stay anonymous for helping me with this segment. As they pointed out, there has been a criminal amount of underreporting of crimes against students, such as the 3 Palestinian students shot in America. This was everywhere on my social media, but completely unheard of on any traditional media outlets and news channels. There was also a skunk attack on pro-Palestinian students in America at the University of Columbia with, again, basically no news reporting, as well as this horrific story of a Zionist man who allegedly murdered a 46-year-old woman in front of her 12-year-old daughter and 19-year-old son. He also stabbed the father 15 times, who was then taken to the hospital. Here's a video of him. When you look at the video, tell me what you notice.
Things that I don't want to do.
But you attacked a 19-year-old child.
I didn't touch him.
You went for him, and the father says you attacked him first. And then the father came to help, and then you checked the father 15 times.
I didn't know that, sir.
15 times you broke the father.
Is he alive?
He's alive, yeah. His son also, alive. You broke him.
Is he alive?
He's alive.
The mother's deceased.
Mother's dead. I mean, you killed an innocent person.
My brother.
And now you want to blame it on something else.
She's not totally innocent.
Huh?
She's not totally innocent.
Why?
Regardless of whatever it is,
what she did.
What she did. You can't compare words and actions,
She hates my family, my friend.
So that's words.
Your family.
How you can compare words and actions, bro? Come on, bro.
I know, it's
You grown, bro.
You're right, I'm wrong.
You a big man. How you can?
I don't know
If she come, if she,
please.
We see this comment from a user.
You can see how psychopathic he is. There's literally no remorse.
Another person said,
The fact they're justifying this behavior.
so where is the outrage on mainstream media? Why can I hardly find any information about this incident online? I found 2 articles with this title: Man in Dock for alleged brutal attack on Glenmore family. Notice how the language here is very different from the reality of the situation. This is a mother who was brutally slaughtered in front of her 2 teenage children in her own home. This is bloody murder. She was declared deceased on the scene. With this language, they could be talking about absolutely anyone who passed away normally. This woman was robbed of her life because of this psychopath of a white man, Grayson James. And because he is a white man, he will mostly be let off for being mentally ill, leaving this psychotic Zionist murderer on the loose. Chapter 3, Psychological Manipulation and Propaganda. Let's talk about delusion. The Met Gala, pretending that the genocide is not even happening. It doesn't even exist. The Met Gala, which started a movement of blocking celebrities and the downfall of celebrity culture. My memory is not very fresh because I read 1984 like over a year ago, but I recall people deliberately making themselves dumber and ignorant. Like, even if they were aware of what was going on, they showed no sign of it. And that's how I feel the celebrities and is not really supporters are doing right now. And I didn't want to mention Elon Musk because he honestly makes me want to throw up, but his hypocrisy really came out this year. One minute he's pledging to give Palestinians access to Starlink, and the next he's cozying up to Satan Yahoo and visiting is not real. And people still continue to support him and Tesla. Like, boycott, people, boycott. And this shows the bigger problem here, how this minority of is not real supporters is small but immensely powerful. Their combined wealth is probably more than of billions of people put together around the world. We also see the psychological manipulation and twisting of narratives in articles, news outlets straight up lying and twisting the truth just because they can, hence why college students don't want to engage with the media, and why Gen Z no longer trusts traditional media sources. Here's an article from unbiasedthenews.org. Journalists are speaking out against Western media bias in inaccurately reporting on is not real in Palestine. As the article is showing, they deliberately use different language when they are talking about Palestinian casualties versus is not reals, subtly influencing people's opinions as they read through articles. So here are some striking examples of differences in language. Take a look at these articles from CNN and the Washington Post. Rockets kill 2 Israelis, 26 die in Gaza as Israel hits Hamas. 4 fragile lives found ended in evacuated Gaza hospital. They use this to manipulate the masses about what's actually happening in Gaza right now. And this is why I, along with many members of my generation, no longer trust traditional media outlets when it comes to honest and professional journalism. It's like it's all gone out the window. And this media manipulation reminds me of a quote from 1984. In the end, the party would announce that 2 and 2 made 5, and you would believe it. It shows the level of control that the party could exert over humans, how they could turn facts into whatever they wanted them to be. We see that happening in the media, we see it happening in politics, with the President of America outright denying evidence of the atrocities being committed against Palestinians by the Israelis, and they're using the average American's hard-earned money that they pay to taxes to fund a genocide in another country. It's such a shame because some people actually prefer reading over watching videos and podcasts. Everybody learns and consumes information differently, but these traditional media sources have shown us time and time again that they have been corrupted and may have ulterior motives with their reporting. Zionists have a chokehold over mainstream media. They are literally everywhere. Chapter 4, the thought police exists in real life. I wanted to point out how similar the thought police is to how they are monitoring us today. Like the USC valedictorian whose right to make her speech was taken away, all because of a simple post she made on social media. You don't have to go viral on social media for them to be digging into your profile. They are literally doing background checks on everyone, and if your social media presence does not align with their agendas, they can take away your job offer, your degree, opportunities, whatever. Like Yusuf Haswa, a Palestinian student from the University of Chicago who was notified that they would not be granting him his degree. His 4 years of hard work thrown out the window. So yeah, free speech doesn't exist apparently when it comes to Palestinians and people of color. Notice how they didn't even have any concrete proof. They took his degree away all based on suspicion. They didn't even know, they couldn't verify if he was actually at the encampments or not. This is the thought police in real life, and no one is safe. Chapter 5, how Is Not Real is trying to rewrite history and the power in controlling the past, which is what Orwell predicted, because in 1984, we see a destruction and manipulation of history present through the rectification of books, newspapers, etc. As I was doing research, I came across a video from Breakthrough News.
Here's the pro-Israel lobby group that's working to change our public schools and textbooks. It's called the Institute for Curriculum Services, a nonprofit organization whose stated goal is improving the accuracy of K-12 instruction and instructional material on Jews, Judaism, and Jewish history. But if you look a little deeper, it's obvious that one of its central goals is pushing pro-Israel narratives.
But even months before this, I had come across songs on social media being sung by Israeli children who were literally singing about murdering Palestinians. Little children are being taught these things. This is absolutely egregious because when we are this young, we are so heavily susceptible to negative influences. So they're literally brainwashing these children into becoming monsters. And it makes you wonder, if we were born in their place, would our morals and values have been corrupted as well? Would we be following in the footsteps of these kids and teens in a society where you can literally be thrown into prison for simply refusing to join the IDF and murder innocent children and victims? Is Not Real tries to rewrite history continuously, painting themselves as victims by constantly using the pain of Jews in the Holocaust, even though there are so many real Jews who are actively protesting against Is Not Real's genocide of Palestinians. They brainwash these children until they are no longer capable of dissenting thought. Chapter 6, I think, the power of hate and desensitization. So for context, in 1984, there is something called Hate Week, which demonstrates how the party uses hate to manipulate and play with people's emotions to make them more susceptible to their campaigns and propaganda. During Hate Week, all party members collectively fume in uncontrollable rage at the blasphemies and wrongs of the enemy state. Hate Week is designed to heighten the feelings of animosity that party members have towards the other state to redirect their discontents from the party itself. Basically, when these people are emotionally charged and they are given something else to redirect their hate towards, they spend less time and energy questioning the party's motives. During Hate Week, they operate not from a place of logic, but rather they need something to just direct their anger and hatred towards because their living conditions are so miserable and the party has intentionally made it that way. And so the party gives them a scapegoat to direct that hate towards. How does this apply to our current world? Well, for decades, the Western media has been painting Muslims, Arabs, and people of color as terrorists, and some people in the West have been eating this up. Little children grow up being afraid of men who look Muslim, even though their religion is literally one of peace, and because of this propaganda, people think it's okay to abuse and sexually harass women wearing hijabs, as shown in that video from Arizona State University. There are also theories, you may have heard this before, that the government and people in power use distractions to redirect our attention while they're basically committing crimes, taking civilian lives, and doing a lot of shady shit. If you guys can remember any time you felt you were being distracted by the media from something happening around the world, please let me know in the comments. Some examples I found while scouring the internet were the Will Smith slap, the Depp versus Heard trial, all of which were apparently distracting us from Russia invading Ukraine and Epstein. Also sports, stupid celebrity drama, all these things that news outlets and traditional media blows out of proportion for absolutely no reason. These last months have revealed the desensitization of the world towards Palestine, Congo, Sudan, black and brown people. This is why influence and education is so powerful and can change the entire trajectory of a generation. Those Israeli kids I mentioned have been brainwashed from birth into believing that they are owed this land and that Palestinians are evil and deserve to die. Similar to an example of children in 1984 being so heavily brainwashed by the government that they listen to them above their family and parents. Now, 1984 does seem to end on a positive note, hinting that all totalitarian governments come to an end. We saw the Holocaust eventually come to an end, and there hasn't been a World War III yet. And another thing to note, some previous student protests in history, such as the one where students were protesting South African apartheid, did result in victory eventually. The resistance to the genocide of Palestinians will prevail, and what I love is that this has revealed the mistreatment of other civilians in other countries, such as Sudan and Congo. And I wanted to say something, I can't remember. Oh yes, so recently I read that Gen Z and millennials currently have a trend where we are looking to invest in more ethical companies. So we're not like willing to give companies our money if they are not ethical, if they do not treat their workers properly. And we're prioritizing ethical solutions a lot more. Obviously, a lot of companies will probably take advantage of the fact that ESG is trending, but I think we are starting to see a shift in how people are looking to make more ethical choices. And now that people are finding out about what's happening to civilians in these countries, the amount of mistreatment that these people receive for their labor is disgusting, and a lot of people are appalled by that, and we want to see change. This being the most widely documented genocide of all time, it's putting all of these atrocities being committed against Palestinians straight in our face on social media, and we're seeing how Gen Z is reacting to it. I have hope for my generation, but the question is, how many more families will be broken apart, displaced, undergo severe mental, physical, and psychological trauma before this genocide finally comes to an end?